Gerry Ryan, the Ryan Line on 2FM, Ireland's number one.
Now, do you remember the visually impaired football team travelling to Turkey? They were representing Ireland for Irish futsal. I remember saying, when we spoke to these guys there a week or so ago, said, a visually impaired football team, how would you possibly play football if you can't see? Well, they can, apparently. Let's find out how they're getting on. Tony, good morning to you.
How are you, Gerry? How was things?
Very good. Now, you're in Turkey. You're in a phone box, I gather, in Turkey, are you?
In a phone box in Turkey, yeah.
Is that where you're staying?
Yeah. No, I'm not going to say that, and someone here might hear me.
No, I know what I can imagine what's going through your head. No, lads, this is a 5-star hotel. They can't see. Anyway, first of all, I hope they're having good crack, are they?
They're having the best of crack out here.
Good,
yeah.
Excellent. Well, that's the most important thing. Now, how are they getting on the footy end of things?
We're doing well, believe it or not. Now, when I tell you we were being beaten twice and drawn one in our 3 games, it sounds bad, but actually the teams we've beaten that beat us are ranked first and third in the world. That's
Belarus, and we were way down the line going out there,
weren't
we?
Way down the line. But those results, and then we drew against Spain, or France, last night 2-2, and that puts us in a position. We're in a game against Serbia tonight. Now, if we beat Serbia by a decent score, we'll finish third in our group, which entitles us to play for fifth and sixth place in the tournament.
Well, that's not bad now, but I presume they thought they were going to beat France, even though I would see, for your team, a draw with France is actually quite good.
We should have beaten them, Gerry.
Yeah, but I think they expected to beat them, didn't you?
Yeah. We thought we could beat them. Just a silly mistake, but that's the way football goes. That's what games are won and lost on mistakes. Really, the experience. I mean, we've discovered that we're the youngest team in the tournament of 10. Our average age is 20.6 years of age.
Yeah, so they're very young fellas. Most
of the teams that we're playing are in their late 20s, early 30s, and they've been together for years. So these guys are picking up loads of experience, and they're developing as we can. In the 3 games, you can see where they're learning and they're developing as they're going along. And
Tony, tell me this: what's been the turnout like? I mean, is there a lot of interest there in Turkey in this?
There's not, I'm afraid to say.
I wouldn't think so.
We're in a sports complex hotel, if you like.
Yeah.
And it's away from the city. There hasn't been big crowds. There've been a few there, less than 100.
And tell me this: do the Turks have their own visually impaired football team?
They do, but they're not doing very well. They should be playing off for 9th and 10th. But you're talking about crowds, Gerry. Actually, we are the only team. Our
supporters.
With 16 supporters have flown over from Turkey, and the noise they're making in the stadium is brilliant. The place is full of Irish flags and the camaraderie and all that goes along with that. And the lads are really living. They really got something to play for, and they've upped their game. And this is a huge game for us tonight, because if we win this game tonight, whether we finish 5th or 6th, it guarantees us a place in the World Championships in Argentina next year. So that's the incentive for them to get a result tonight.
Okay, how do you feel about tonight's game?
I think we'll beat them, but we've got to get a score against them, because we're into goal difference now, because France have just beaten Serbia 14, but we have a better goal difference than France. So we've got to beat them, I'd say, by about 11. Which is possible, I'm not going to say we're going to do anything. You can't be cocky about these things. But I think we can do it, believe it or not.
You have to beat them by 11 goals.
Yeah.
Jesus.
No, it can be done. It can be done.
All right, well, I'll tell you what. I'll say the rosary for you. Well,
I can't say it over here. I'm afraid to produce rosary beads.
Yeah, you might get whipped with them. So I wish you the very best of luck. Maybe give us a shout tomorrow and tell us how you got on, okay?
I can't tomorrow, because we have to get out of here. They're taking us on a whirlwind trip of Ankara, believe it or not.
Yeah.
But what I will do is, if you need a Friday morning, I'll certainly give you a buzz.
I'd love that. Would you do that?
And we'll know the full results of how.
And tell us how you got on. Okay, take it easy.
Gerry, it's a pleasure to talk to you.
And give my regards to the lads. I wish them the very best of luck tonight, okay?
I appreciate that. Thanks. Gerry. God bless.
That's Tony and Tony MacDonald, who's the coach of the Irish visually impaired futsal team. They're over there playing in this international tournament in Turkey, and I think it's tonight. Isn't it Serbia they're playing tonight? Isn't it? Have to beat them by 11 goals. Well, we were seeded pretty much way down the line, so they're doing quite well, I think.
19 to 92. The Gerry Ryan Show, Monday to Friday, 9 till 12 on 2FM.
Sharina, good morning to you. How are you?
Hi, Gerry.
Well,
Well, I'm kind of fine.
you're kind of fine. Why? What's wrong?
Oh, my mother abandoned me.
Your mother's abandoned you.
She abandoned me after 36 years. They lived up the road from me.
Yeah.
In my family home. They moved down to the country.
Oh,
now, I know it's not that far, but...
She's been rurally resettled.
Yes.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that happens sometimes. Usually the other way
know.
around.
I know. Well, you see, she went after the others. She followed all the others down. I'm from a large family.
Yeah. How many
I have
people are
5
in your
brothers
family?
and 5 sisters.
And have they all resettled as well? Have they?
Bar my brother. He lives in Tala.
Yeah. And
So,
have you got a
others
family yourself? Have you?
I have 2 kids. I have a husband and 2 children.
And so for your entire married life and for all your mothering thus far, you've had your own mother down the road to help.
Well,
you.
yeah, and it was great, like, because she was more like my best friend, you know.
And is the family home sold now, is it?
Yeah, there's someone else in it. I was up there last night, actually.
That's a weird one, isn't it, when you pass
It's too
by?
weird. It's just too weird. And the girl said to me, come on in. I said, I'm sorry, I can't. It's too weird, you know.
You know, I pass our old family home on Kincora Avenue nearly every day of my life. And, well, my kids are sick of hearing it, and I don't blame them either. And the people who live there now have done a fantastic job in the place.
I know.
It never looked as brilliant as it does now. But I'd love to just go
See
in
it
and
again.
have a look.
Yeah.
You know.
The memories are fresh
Or
in my
maybe
head.
that would be upsetting, would it? I don't know. What do you think?
Well, it is, because, like, the laugh we used to have, like, with, you know, so many of us, and I could tell you a few stories, but I won't. But it's just somebody else in there, and I don't know, it's just too weird.
It is kind of weird, isn't it?
Yeah, but I lived there all my life, bar a year I lived in Calla.
Have they started changing the house yet, Trina?
No. Well, she said last night she was waiting on the painter to come in. Like, I spent the last 3 months helping them pack up. Like, 36 years is a long time to pack.
You bet.
Because they never threw out anything, really, so... And it was just in an empty house. It was, like, echoey, and it's so sad. Now I'm afraid to talk. Oh, it's sad, you know.
Well,
really.
I'd love to say you'll get over it, but you don't really. I mean, I've never got over passing 108 Kincora Avenue every single time. Even when I'm in a rush and I'm tearing around the corner, heading down towards my own house, I look over at it and I go... And I always look up at where my bedroom used to be, and I think of all the nights there and all the days and all the Christmas mornings when I woke up, and I often think then of the first girlfriend who sat up in the bedroom with you and your mother coming up and getting her name wrong and whatever else. And
we weren't allowed.
And all that. Well, there wasn't much of it allowed in my house either, for that matter. My mother used to burst in the door. Mary! And I'd say, her name's not Mary, her name's not Mary, her name's not Mary.
What makes it worse, though, is I live 10 doors down.
Yeah.
So, like, I have to pass.
Yeah.
You know, the kids don't understand. They keep saying, we're going into Nanny's today. So, no, she doesn't live there anymore. Oh, God loves them. I mean, it's worse for me because I lived there, like, bar 1 year, like 35 years, you know.
Well, you know what you should do? When the new year comes along, you should... actually just do it. Just go and have a little look round, and that'll get it at least partially out of your system.
I probably will. Like, I will get it. I mean, I'm 45. Get over it, you know.
Get over it, girl. Yeah.
Yeah. Hello.
Maybe I could help you get over it with something out of Santa's sack.
Okay, if you want to.
Yeah, they're all so well behaved this year, aren't they? You know, in previous years gone by, they used to be gagging at the mouth, waiting to get it. And Gerry, give it to me. I'm not telling you the story unless you give me something from Santa's sack. No, so you're not allowed to do that anymore.
I mean, after hearing the poor stories of people that were on before me, oh my
Jesus,
God.
Yeah, I know. There's been some bad stories there.
Fair play to those fellas who got over it, like, you know, and that poor woman.
And her son gone back on the heroin.
I know. After all
Okay,
that.
Brown Thomas's. Okay, that's where Santa's going.
Lovely.
Now, you're to keep this yourself. Don't give this
I
away.
will. I never get out for myself. I always buy for others.
Yeah, well, this is for you, right? This is a Waterford Crystal. John Rocha red glasses set, right?
Wow.
One of the world's most respected designers, making his mark in the home once again with the launch of his stunning new range, Red for Waterford Crystal. The hallmark of this dramatic collection is a decadent, deep red crystal. These are really unusual. They're gorgeous.
I like red.
Yeah. Well, you'll love it. They're beautiful.
Thanks very much,
Okay,
Gerry.
and they'll make it. They're a lovely set piece, and you can use them as well. I mean, they're there.
Yeah.
They're there for a purpose. All right, enjoy.
Thanks very much,
Take
Gerry.
care.
You're very good. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Annette, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gerry. How are you?
Very good. What have you got for me?
I wanted to tell you and everybody on the show and whatever about the fact that the 1911 1911 census is now available online.
That's right. I was reading about it in the Irish Times yesterday. This would have been just before, obviously, the 1916 Rising. It would have been before the First World War. And, of course, it was Ireland at a very particular time in its history.
Yeah, and it seems a very different place too. And you can do it two ways. You can either look for people, or you can do what I've done, which is to see who lived in my house in 1911.
Oh,
right?
I'm definitely going to do that.
It's fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating.
Okay, tell me, first of all, how do you go to the website? Where is it?
Well, it's very simple. You just go in National Archives, right?
Okay.
Census 1911, and it'll come up, right? And then there's a whole host of stuff which, if people aren't aware of the history, as maybe you are or not, maybe I am, there's a whole lot of articles at the front which are very interesting because they put all of this information in context, if you like, for what was going on in Ireland at the time, what Dublin was like at the time. Now, I should stress that it's only Dublin that's available at the moment.
Yeah, they're hoping to extend that in the next few years, aren't they?
They are. They say by 2009 the whole country will be on it. But it really is fascinating to look back at what your home was like.
Where do you live, by the way, Annette?
I live in Glasnevin, in Finglas Road in Glasnevin.
Okay.
And first of all, the place where I live used to be called Juverna Terrace, right? I've since found out that Juverna was an old Roman name for Ireland, predating Hibernia. But anyway, in my house then, there were 7 people living. There was Henry Shaw and his wife, Anna Maria. There are 3 children, Elrina, Dudley and Walter. What I presume, they were all Church of Ireland. And then there's a 19-year-old Ethel Clark, who I presume must have been the children's nanny or whatever.
Yeah.
And then there's 24-year-old Katie Malone, who's Roman Catholic and who's their servant, right? And I will never walk up and down my stairs now without thinking Katie Malone, because that girl must have had to bring up and down the stairs buckets of coal to, obviously there wouldn't have been central heating at the time, and there's fireplaces in all the bedrooms. And I will think of her every time I walk up my stairs. Or 4-year-old Walter charging up and down the stairs, or 6-year-old Dudley. It just sort of brings the
And did
past.
he tell you what, for instance, what Henry Shaw did for a living at 43 years of age?
That's the great thing about it is, the first thing you get is you get a list of the people in your house, right? And then there's another thing, a sub-menu, which says household return form, right? Which is page 1. And that is the actual form that they made their return on, the sort of a census form that you and I would have filled in, right? And according to this, Henry A. Shaw was 43, and he was a cattle shipper, right? Now, I presume that area, like, I read a book years ago by Nora Holt all about the sort of the area around the North Circular Road. And, of course, the top of the North Circular Road at that stage was called Cowtown. Yeah. Because all the cattle pens were at the top of it. And there were these enormous houses up there which were owned by very wealthy people who were cattle dealers. Now, I presume Henry Shaw wasn't a cattle dealer as such, but he was a cattle shipper. So presumably he arranged for the cattle to be shipped from that area to Britain. I presume that's the only place it would have been going at that stage. So that's what he did. But I just think it's
And does it say
fascinating.
anything else about the rest of his wife, Anna Maria? She was 37. Elrina, 8 years of age. Walter, 6, and Dudley, 4.
That's right. And, well, I know, for instance, that Henry came from Westmeath. His wife came from Sligo. His children were born in Westmeath. His nanny was born in Longford, and his Katie Malone, the servant, was born in Westmeath as well. Now, there's also provision on the census form to give you total number of children born and total children living. Yeah. And in this case, their 3 children were obviously hale and hearty, and they survived.
Yeah, which wouldn't have been all that usual in those days.
No, it would not. But if you go to other areas of the city where, other areas of the city, it's quite scary, people having 5 children and 2 dead, that sort of thing, And it really makes you think about how different people's lives were then, in a way that reading it in a history book doesn't. I just think this is fascinating, and I'm fascinated by it. My son is fascinated by it. I spent yesterday at lunchtime going through this and looking up various areas I know and various people I know and all that.
Now, when you say that your street was called a different name before,
yes,
how did you then identify that?
It's very easy actually, because what happens is if you click on Dublin right on the menu, you get a list. You get a list of areas in Dublin. Yeah. Now, within that, some of them will be completely obvious. I'm just looking at it now. Arrankey, Balbriggan Rural, Ballybrack, Balscadden. And then if you go into that, there'll be subcategories of streets and what.
Are you on it at the moment?
Yes, I am, yeah.
Okay, well, will you go to Castle Avenue, 18 Castle Avenue?
No, you have to, first of all, was the house existing?
Yes, it's 200 years old.
Okay, right. Castle Avenue. Now, I don't know whether that's... Hold on a minute now. I'm looking. There's 3 different... Castle Avenue. Here we are. Okay. Castle Avenue, yeah.
18.
And 18. Hold on a minute now.
This is my house, by the way, Gus.
Oh, really? Yeah. Reedy's. Now.
Reedy's?
Reedy's was the name.
And how do you spell that?
R-I-E-D-Y.
Okay, go on. Tell me all about them.
Thomas, aged 52. Mina, who was 35. Violet Farrelly, who's aged 17, and Alice Smith, aged 50. Now, if you go into the original form, it tells me that now, Thomas Reedy, he's the head of household. He's a Catholic. He can read and write. He's aged 52. Now,
what did he do?
It's hard. I'm going to have to print that off in order to see what he did, because it's hard to read. He's been married for 17 years.
Yeah. To a young woman.
To a woman of 38.
Mm-hmm.
And she's Mina. Now, I don't know who the other people... they have a 17-year-old niece living with them. I'll print it off because I can't read it properly. But they have a 17-year-old niece living with them, and then there's this woman, Alice Smith, and I don't know what her...
How old is Alice Smith?
She's 50.
I wonder what she was.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'll just go back. I'll print that, and while I'm printing, I'll come back and tell you because there seem to be more people in number 18 as well.
Oh, really? Go on.
Yeah, hold on. It's... no, it's just Reedy and Smith. So this is printing off now, and I'll be able to tell you I'd be able to tell you more about it, because sometimes it's more difficult to read on screen, but you can actually usually read it when you've printed it. Okay. But I mean, it's just fascinating. It's just fascinating to know who's...
So obviously the people that lived in my house back in 1911, they didn't have any children. It doesn't sound like they had any children.
No, it doesn't sound like they had any children. So you're making up for that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's funny because I have 3 children of my own, a girl and 2 boys as well. Yeah. And it just seems funny that history would repeat itself, you know.
Because that's what Henry Shaw and Anna Maria had. Yeah.
Exactly. And I mean, from my point of view, I suppose we've always wondered about our house. Our house they're nice old red brick houses, you know, sort of houses you get in Glasnevin, the sort of strain built ones. But our house dates from 1904. And when the house was built, it was lived in by an elderly woman and her servant. And I've never understood why anybody would buy a house as big as this to just live on their own. Do you know what I mean? I'm much prefer the picture of this sort of 7-person household.
Yeah, so do I. I like
running
the sound
up and down the stairs and what have you.
I mean, the Reedy household sounds a bit weird. Have you got it printed out there?
Yeah, it's on its way out now. But it does sound a bit weird. Yeah, I don't. I mean, they sound like the couple have their niece living with them. Yeah. And maybe the 15-year-old is the servant, you know, which is the poor unfortunate.
But they're Roman Catholics, are they?
They are Roman Catholics.
Because there would have been a lot of Protestants living around the Vernon estate at that time, and I always thought that those houses that I live in, there's 2 or 3 of them where the bailiff estates, the estate agent's house. Yeah. But that might have been before 1911. We'll see.
Now, yeah,
because a lot of the Vernons, very close to where I lived, they went off in the regiments, in the Irish regiments, to the First World War and never came back.
Really?
Yeah, never
came. The other thing you can do about that, the other thing it allows you to do is it allows you to look at how the house was rated in terms of its quality, if you like. Then
How's my house rated back in 1911?
I'll have to find that out for you. Hold on a minute now. General, yes, the 50-year-old was the general servant. General domestic
so they had a
servant.
50-year-old servant.
They had a 50-year-old servant,
Right, so she would have been the housekeeper.
She was the housekeeper,
What was her name again?
Her name was Lily Smith.
Lily Smith. Where's Lily Smith when I need her? Go on.
And then Thomas Reedy, as I said, he was born in County Clare.
Yeah.
His wife, who's actually 35, he's 52, she's 35.
The dirty devil.
She was born they've been married 17 years, so he married her at 18 when he was 34.
Yeah, good man.
And she's from Galway.
Yeah.
And then their 17-year-old niece, so she's born in Dublin, and the servant, she's born in Dublin as well.
And what does he do? What did it say he did?
It's very hard, actually. It's very hard to read that. I have it. It's Staff Officer, Board of National Education. That's what he is.
Staff Officer, Board of National Education.
He's a civil servant. That's what he is. He's a civil servant.
There, and that's what I am today.
Senior Staff Officer, Board of National Education, Dublin. That's who he is.
Okay, I'm going to have a look at that later on. Do you know what? Fantastic. That's the sort of thing I love it.
What I'll do is I'll send you the link to it, Gerry, and you can check it out yourself.
Now, I'm going to have to give you something very quickly from,
thank you very much.
Brian Thomas's, right?
Thank
Out
you.
of Santa's sack. Let's see what we've got for you. Viles Clark waiting outside with wine. Very important. You're getting a stunning photograph frame and coloured enamel even. Diamond encrusted. Elegant mirror form. Yes, it's the Addison Ross collection. This is a beautiful collection. A collection of both modern and traditional frames that will feature in any interior style. Expertly crafted and ideal for the home or as a gift. Isn't that nice?
Ah, yes. And since my house is a first-class one, it deserves a first-class frame.
In 1911, your house was better quality than mine, was it?
Oh, it was, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Shite.
First, it was Ali v. Foreman. Then Collins v. Eubank. And now it's time for the big one. Farrelly and Scott. It ain't how hard you can get hit. It's how hard you can take it. Ruth and Damien fight it out every night to get through your texts. The Frequency with Ruth Scott and Damien Farrelly. Weeknights here on 2FM. Are you ready to take us on?
2FM.
Now, let me just read something for you here. Of course, drugs have been very much a part of the agenda on the programme over the last couple of weeks, particularly today. Young Kevin is very much in our minds. It's the young 21-year-old boy who survived testicular cancer. He survived friggin' cancer he had, right? And he was on the mend. Ended up going to a house party, as you now know, in Waterford. Ended up ingesting a sufficiently large amount of cocaine to put him into a coma, as happened to his new friend, because I don't think he knew most of these guys, young Doyle, who was at the party as well, or Gray, should I say. And we had Mrs. Gray on the other day, and she was telling us about what happened in the house on that night. As far as she's concerned, she didn't know anything about the drugs, been there, and her son came running downstairs and said, "Mum, there's a fella upstairs. He's after collapsing. We better get the ambulance." And then he subsequently collapsed almost immediately following that himself. One boy dead now, another still on life support, and of course then the deep fear that maybe Katie French has been through a similar experience makes us all very mindful of the dangers involved here. Here's an email, grs@rt.ie. It's not just teenagers who are taking cocaine. I'm in my late 30s and stopped taking it a few years ago. I started taking it in my late teens, and at first it was a Saturday night thing, but gradually the cocaine taking would start on Friday evening and finish on Monday night. Things came to a head when I lay in bed at night with my heart racing and unable to sleep. I decided I'd had enough, and I finished with it. It was hard to give up, but I did it. You see, some people have the personality to be able to do that. A lot of people don't. I also think that it's very much there's a gender divide on this as well. This is the elephant in the room too. Women, I believe, become more addicted more quickly to that drug than men do. As I have said, this is not a teenage thing. The whole generation of drug takers from the early 90s, people from the club and rave scene, are now parents, and many of them are taking coke. I know this. Many of them are friends of mine. Cocaine is everywhere. I see it on the tops of toilets and pubs. Watch out for the people who can drink more and not get drunk and buy their drinks with rolled up notes. People are working long shifts and using cocaine to keep them awake. It becomes a part and parcel of their life. I don't know what the solution to this is, but for many people in their 30s and 40s, taking a line of coke is as much a part of a night out as having a drink. Teenagers at least have awareness of the risks involved. The adults seem oblivious to the dangers. Yours, a listener. And let's see, Kieran first. Kieran, good morning to you.
Morning, Gerry. How are you?
Welcome. It's good to have you on board. You're 27. And I think you're able to remember some of the most effective and efficient experiences you had that made you aware of the dangers of drugs.
Well, that's right, Gerry. I remember during our transition year in school, part of the course was that the school invited in people like Darren, who you just had on the programme, to speak to the class and tell us their stories and basically how their lives were utterly turned upside down, destroyed by drugs. And even though it was very real at the time, and we were constantly being told by teachers and parents and constantly in the newspapers and things like that, the fact that there were really people who weren't that much older than ourselves, or probably around my age now, who came in, sat down, and basically told us their stories, made it very, very real. And that was probably the best form of education I ever got in relation, to stay away from drugs.
From the horse's mouth.
From the horse's mouth. Because remember, I went to college a couple of years later. To be honest with you, at that age, 14, 15, 16, you're very impressionable. And if John Gilligan had walked in and told us all that drugs were cool and they're all great and brilliant, and that, what I mean, you're at that impressionable age that you'll take everything on board. But well,
you see, it was very difficult at that age, and I certainly encountered this in relation, to my own children, right? When wondering, exactly how would you warn them away from ecstasy during particularly during the rave era, say in the last 10 years. Yeah. And it was very, very difficult to try and come up with something that was credible, because you had 6,000 to 7,000 people pouring out of venues around Ireland, sometimes, and everybody'd had a good night. And you heard the occasional case.
You had the odd case then, you picked.
But you know what they would say then? And I'm not saying my own kids said this to me, but I know that this was the general attitude, particularly of teenagers, was, what the fucking hell are they talking about? We were all having a great time last night. It was fantastic. Everybody was rocking. And I know of nobody who died. I just heard it on the news that some fella died down in such and such a place. And sure, 6,000 to 1. Surely the odds are pretty much the same when it comes to alcohol. What are they talking about? It was very difficult to try and sell, for instance, the idea that with ecstasy, you were looking at a drug that was going to deliver a mental health issue a decade later on. Yes. You couldn't say that. They just laugh at you.
No, you couldn't, but that's
and also, it's very hard to tell somebody who's just started taking cocaine, or somebody who may have the metabolism to take it and not suffer too seriously compared to the next person. It's very hard to tell them, look, the fact that you're voluble, you feel very alert, and you're having a great time, and you're able to drink more than you were without it, and you seem to be fine the next day because you're taking a sleeping tablet when you go home, so you are getting a night's sleep. It's very hard to tell them, well, this is very dangerous and people could die from this. It's the deaths that we're witnessing. Just like what you were being told from the horse's mouth.
It's even harder as a teenager to listen to all this because it all seems so distant and so.
Yeah, and it's all bullshit. It's your grey-haired old man saying it to you, who never had a day's crack in his life, according to you.
Exactly, because according to teenagers, that's the truth. Until I was woken up that day. Well, to be honest with you, I remember thinking to myself that day. The one line the guy that really summed it up was, my only intention was ever to try these drugs once, but they completely took over my life. And I remember thinking to myself, 4 or 5, even now, any time that I've heard the mention of drugs in pubs or clubs, that one sentence always comes back into my head. Alcohol is the only drug, mind-altering drug that I've ever taken, and it's enough and too much at times. But to be honest with you, I think that I'd love to know how many schools out there are doing this, because I think it was fantastic, and it's the one single thing.
It worked for you.
That worked for me, and I think that as many.
Would you say it worked for your pals?
It did. I mean, to be honest with you, I have a very close bunch of friends, and I can safely say that none of them have ever taken drugs. They're all doing really well. They've got good jobs.
Would you consider that unusual by today's standards?
When we look at at other people, and to be honest with you, we're a good close bunch of lads, and we never took any drugs. And when you look back, you can spot the people now who are taking them, and it's hard for us to understand why they're taking them. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm just before I came on, I heard you speaking about the guy down at Waterford. I mean, he just survived testicular cancer.
Just beyond
belief. I mean, I remember asking one of the guys when they came into the school, what was the single most important factor? Was it peer pressure? Was it you like these pricks? And I'm not excusing myself for using the word like Pete Doherty. He seems to be in the news every single week for taking drugs, and he's up on court, and he never seems to be glorifying these drugs. And this is sending the wrong impression to teenagers completely. That drugs are cool, and that no matter what you do, Pete Doherty gets away with it, I'll get away with it.
Well, Pete Doherty sends a very dangerous message. He sends out a kind of a reckless message.
Well, he does.
It's we were talking to Dr. Chris Luke, I think is that Dr. Luke's name, just a short while ago, a couple of days ago, and I said, are you just don't say no, man? And he said, no. He said, obviously people are going to take drugs, so obviously you do have to say, if you are going to take drugs, try and be as careful about what you do and don't mix them with alcohol, and try not to take too much of them, and try and examine the reasons behind why you're doing it, and because people will do that, and the just say no thing doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't work for anything.
I'd love to know with Darren, the previous caller, what was his main influence? Was it the fact that he
I think he must have woken up at some stage and just gone, my life is poxy.
Gerry, I've woken up and thought my life is poxy.
No, but he must have just woken up and said, I could have a better life. If I wasn't so dependent, I think a lot of people get personally offended when they realise that the drug is controlling. That's fine when the drug isn't controlling you. When you're doing a few lines, taking your dropping tabs, smoking dope, whatever, and you feel that you're on top of it and it's your servant, well, then probably you don't have too many worries about it. You might die of a heart attack, but you're not going to anticipate that unless you watch the news very carefully. You're not going to. But it's when you wake up and you go, oh, I'm not going on holidays. I don't have a job. I don't have a relationship. I can't get an erection. There's a lot of stuff happening here. This is a lot of shit that's going down in my life, and it's happening to me. I'm not asking for it. I'm not taking it. I'm not using it as kind of a tool in my, Friday night, Saturday morning fun house. This is actually my life, and it's controlling me. It's a monster, and it's controlling me. I think maybe that's the point where some guys go, I'm out of here. I'm not doing this anymore, and others just give in.
Yeah, but Darren also came out with a statement there that I thought was very interesting. He said that when he was injecting cocaine, that he got a complete rush for 5 or 6 seconds. Yeah. And then after that, he said, it was your worst illness, and it's worse than your worst illness. Yeah. And I'd just love to ask him, was at the time, was that high worth it? Because obviously he must have.
No, but can you imagine the addiction that would be involved in injecting cocaine? Injecting it. I mean, how he's alive is utterly beyond me, but he is still alive, so that's good. Kieran, good morning to you. Thank you for that. From the horse's mouth, says Kieran. It's only credible. The only people who can actually tell you about how dangerous drugs or alcohol or unprotected sex is, or whatever, are those who suffer the consequence. Annette, good morning to you.
Good morning, Gerry.
How are you?
Not too bad. I'm
you spoke to me before.
It at the moment. I did. And my son was a heroin addict, and he was clean back in October.
And you were delighted with yourself.
Oh, well, life was taking on some form of normality, which is brilliant. But unfortunately, he went out to watch a match in the local, had a few drinks, done some coke, and his kind buddy got a taxi, dropped him out of the taxi, propped him up against the wall, and when the ambulance found my son, he had 5 minutes to live. His organs had started to close down. His lungs had started to fill with fluid. I got a phone call to go to the local hospital, and my son was wrapped in tinfoil. They were trying to make him breathe. I can't reiterate how much and how dangerous it is to mix alcohol and cocaine.
And this wasn't even the smack.
No, this was cocaine. He wasn't. He was clean. He met up with a gentleman friend of his, shall we say, because we're on air, and he gave him coke and a mixture of the two. And then he
And did
got
he take
into
a lot of
taxi
it,
with
or
him.
what?
He has no idea. He has no idea. He doesn't know how he got from the pub to where he was found or anything. And the guy that gave him the coke got him out of the taxi, stood him against the wall and went off and left him. And if a lady hadn't seen my son collapse, I would be have buried my son. And we had gone through months trying to get him clean, sorting him out.
I know, I remember your story. I remember the story.
I went up to the hospital and they had a machine on him to help him to breathe, and I was looking at the heart monitor, and his heart was racing all over the place. And they were doing the toxicology on, they said it was coke, and I just said, all I kept saying, but he's clean, but he's clean.
Had he taken cocaine before?
No. No, heroin was his drug of choice.
So in other words, when coke came in, it came in like a truck.
Yeah, because he's been clean for a couple of weeks.
And ran him over. And that's how you get killed. That's how a lot of these people end up getting these cardiac arrests. They don't take the drug for a while. They go out, they get hammered, they lash in a load of it. Not like people who took drugs 20, 30, 40 years ago. They lash it in, and everybody's shocked that the guy's getting a heart attack.
But you're sitting on the floor 1 minute playing with your grandchild and life is not bad. No. And you're getting told...
I know how happy you were.
Get to the hospital. Your son is in a bad way.
How is he now? How is he now?
He's missing in action. He's back on heroin because he won't answer his phone. I've texted him, asked him to come down for dinner, to try and keep the lines of communication open.
And what happened? He got out of hospital after he stabilised.
Got out of hospital, swore on every Bible that was in my house he'd never touch nothing again. Ma'am, I'm so sorry for putting you through this because we were there for 16 hours.
How old is he now? How old is he?
It could be his birthday in January and he'll be 27.
And he's back out on heroin?
He's back, big time.
What are you going to do?
But see, I can't do it, Gerry.
You're going to have to just close the door now for a while.
I mean, I've done it for so long. I've paid his bills, I've picked them up, I've dressed them, we've cleaned them up. We've gone through the cold turkey with him. At this stage, I could get a monkey off heroin. It's keeping them off.
Yeah.
The facilities aren't there. He was going to a counsellor at one stage, and his counsellor told him he was addicted to being addicted. Whatever that means.
It means exactly as I was saying earlier on.
Yeah.
It has become his way of life. He doesn't use the drug. The drug is in control of him.
Yeah, he has a problem. He takes heroin. We've problems now. I've problems now. It's coming up to Christmas. I don't know if I will bury my son before Christmas or after or what will happen. And this is how we live our life every day.
How many other kids have you got?
I have 2 daughters. And I have 2 grandchildren.
Well, this is very hard to say to any mother, but you're going to have to close your door on him for the time being.
Yeah, we've had to kind of walk away because he was destroying our lives.
But you will be destroyed.
Yeah.
We heard the other women. Remember the other woman that was on with you that time?
Yeah.
And her life was absolutely mangulated.
Yeah. Yeah.
From being lied to, from being robbed, from being let down, from being disappointed, from being looked at by the rest of the community like a pariah.
Yeah. But you want your child to be a survivor, not a statistic. Yes, that's the bottom line. And I have done everything within... Oh, of course I do. I don't love him when he's on drugs because he's a different person. His way of speaking to you, everything changes. It's like Jekyll and Hyde. But the son that was there, I love. But not the heroin one, no.
Well, you're going to have to close the door. You can't have that back into your life.
No, but you're waiting on the phone call. You're waiting on the police at the door to say, we have your son.
Where is he living? Has he got a flat?
He's in rented accommodation, and I don't want to be tormenting there because I don't want him to lose his... Because he was living, rough for a while, and we helped him to get somewhere because I won't have drugs in my home. I won't have him with drugs in my home because I have 2 other children. I have grandchildren growing up and I don't want it for them. That's not how I live. I've never taken a drug in my life. But that's the way it is. But it's just, my daughter was on the bus going into town last Saturday night, and she was on the 49, and she was upstairs with her boyfriend, and she was saying the number of girls that were taking coke out of their bras and snorting it. She got off the bus because she couldn't cope with seeing, because she'd see, we've been on the receiving end of what that can do.
Yeah.
And she said, like, these were lovely-looking girls, and they thought they were the bomb going out, and they're cleaning around their teeth with cocaine. And she said, I couldn't go. She came home because she was so upset. So that's it. Welcome to my world.
Well, I'm sorry for your trouble.
Sure. We live to fight another day.
Well, you're going to have to take care of yourself. That's the only thing.
Yeah.
You're going to have to take care of yourself. Suppose you think I was mad if I went into Santa's sack for you, would you?
Well, I texted you on Monday, actually, about Santa's sack, because you actually cost me a fortune the weekend.
Why?
I went out, I was listening to you about your cocktail, and I went out and I was doing my shop, and then I got a bottle of Grey Goose.
Yeah.
And when I got home, I realised it was 48 flipping euros.
Yeah, it's
I said,
expensive.
heck, Gerry!
I'm sorry about that. Did you get the blue Curaçao with it, did you?
No, that's this week.
Yeah, that's
I'm on limited income here, you know what I mean?
Look, you deserve something. You're having a shit time at the moment, so let's just find
welcome
something.
to you.
Yeah, let's have a little look in here. See what we've got. Life is crap and then you die.
Oh, absolutely. I get hit by a bus.
Yeah, but that's not going to happen to you, though.
No, God, no. No, I'm a survivor, Gerry. I've survived this far.
Oh, yeah, here's a nice little piece for you here. This is from Paul Sheeran's Jewellers, right?
Yeah.
Won't solve all your problems. Won't solve any of them. But it might make you smile for a minute or two. It's a John Rocha. You know John Rocha, the designer? John Rocha. Small single Oriel pendant in silver. And
lovely.
And it's for you. Okay?
Thank
Don't
you so
give it
much.
to anybody else. It's for you.
No, and I'll hide it if he's in the house.
Yeah, do. You might have to. You don't want it going into somebody's arm. All right, good luck to you.
Thank you very much,
Take
Gerry,
care.
and happy Christmas
Yeah,
to
look,
you and all
I'll
of yours.
pray for you. Annette.
Thanks, I could do with it.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
Gerry